All right, y'all. I might start with just the intro. It looks like we have some people filtering in. I see quite a few names I recognize. So everyone, welcome to the first monthly, annual, I don't know, Mandieland Town Hall. I'm glad y'all are calling in. I'm sorry this has to be done from a video and not in person, but that's the world we're in now. Most of y'all know me, but for anyone who is new to this, I'm the new representative for House District 91 in New Orleans. That's a district that's mostly uptown. It's Irish Channel, Milan, Holly Grove, parts of Broadmoor. It's the district that Walt Leger had until last year. I'm a member of the Civil Law, Judiciary, and Natural Resources Committees, and that will come up for y'all in a minute. I am a longtime lawyer, native of New Orleans, grew up on the West Bank. And while we're having this, because I wanted to tell a lot of y'all who've been very involved this year what happened during legislative session, and also to introduce you to some of my wonderful friends who are involved in campaigns and elections and government in many different ways. And there's all kinds of ways you can get involved. So real quickly, while people are still filtering in, I want to do brief intros for the people who are going to be on the call, because some of them are going to come in and out. So first we have texting on his phone is Ted James. Wave at us, Ted. Ted is a longtime representative from District 101, right? 101 in Baton Rouge. How can I describe Ted? Ted is well known to many of us in Baton Rouge because he is, I call him a force of nature. He is one of the more progressive members of the House. He is a friend and mentor to many of us, has been involved in politics a long time. He's also a lawyer, and this is going to be his final term in the House. Then we go to, I'll go right across my screen, Kat McKinney. Kat is a new LSU graduate, and I got to know her this year because unbeknownst to me, she started her own organization called Louisiana Vote by Mail to try to expand universal vote by mail, and I happened to have a bill that would do the same thing. So we got to be friends, and she came and testified, and now she's working for Jamie Harrison, who hopefully will be one of the new senators elected in the fall. We also have Marcelle. Marcelle is the genius behind Louisianahbrah. I'm probably not saying it right, but a lot of y'all here are probably here because
everyone is saying it.
I don't know. Everything's in pink, including Ted James when he's on there. But Marcelle is a longtime political operative. Can I call you that? Something.
Sure.
Sure. She's been in politics, and she used her creativity and knowledge of social media to get a lot of y'all involved, similar to what Kat did with a lot of students. And then Cagney Goodly, switching up that a little bit. Cagney was my field director last year and is field director for a campaign now. And if you hear people say field wins, it is true. You have to touch voters, whether it's social media or on their doors. And for an unknown candidate, such as myself, who didn't have a lot of money to start with, you have to knock doors. And Ted did that too at the beginning. Ted told me how he would stand outside churches and buildings and just wave at people and get to know people. So you got to touch people. So that's what we're doing tonight. I'm going to give you all 5 minutes on the session, and then we're going to switch to Ted. So this past year in Baton Rouge, we had a very shortened COVID session because we went in March for 1 week, and then we got kicked out because of what was happening, and we went back in March for a month, and then we went to a special session in June. And unfortunately, much of what, I say unfortunately for us in New Orleans, what happened this year were, to me, a lot of corporate tax breaks, a lot of liability protections for businesses, and not a lot for your average worker or your average resident in Louisiana. We did have a few wins. We were able to pass a rebate for some frontline workers. We also had a lot of wins on criminal justice reform. I had my first bill passed that made the first change to solitary confinement in over 100 years. It prohibits solitary for people who are pregnant, who have just given birth. And if you're wondering why we needed a law on that, we all are. But that has been happening around the country. And what we're going to try to do with that is start limiting solitary for people with mental issues, because it's become a real problem, especially in our state. We also had several bills, I think Ted can talk more about, that would shorten probation, I believe. Is that right? Or shorten parole. We abolished the crime of vagrancy. That was still a crime left over from, I think, Civil War times. And there were a few other procedural things that we were able to do. We were not able to expand vote by mail this year. However, we did expand it. We were able to get the Secretary of State to expand it a bit for the election that we just had in the next one. That is going to be an ongoing problem because, as many of you know, there were still problems with mail ballots, and we still don't know what we're doing in November, unfortunately. Some other highlights from the session. So I got my butt kicked a lot, but it was a good fight. And for those of y'all watching, that's the point of having new voices and progressive voices. And I got a lot of help from people like Marcelle and Ted and my Democratic colleagues. I had the only bill this year that would have addressed eviction protections, that would have expanded them slightly, and they didn't like that. They didn't like vote by mail. I had a resolution just a few weeks ago with my friend Devontae, a lot of y'all know, who we were trying to urge Jeff Landry, not my cousin, to remove himself and the state from so there's a lawsuit that went all the way up to the Supreme Court to declare the Affordable Care Act unconstitutional right now in the middle of the pandemic. Also, we have over 500,000 people in the state who now have health care through Medicaid expansion. And we have 900,000 people in our state who, if the ACA was declared unconstitutional, would possibly not have health insurance because they have pre-existing conditions. So that affects so many people. We also in Louisiana never closed a rural hospital since we did the Medicaid expansion, and all of the other states in the South that rejected it lost a lot of their hospitals. So now is more important than ever that we have Medicaid expansion and access to healthcare. But it was fun. It was a learning experience. It was extremely stressful, and for something that those of y'all in New Orleans kind of understand, like we have our little bubble down here, and coming home every weekend was, I mean, it was like a breath of fresh air to know I could come home and that there were people here who believed in principles that I believed in and that I could feel comfortable around. And for many of us, especially on the left, when we're in Baton Rouge, it can feel like going into battle every single day. And it really wears on you a lot. And that's something that I wasn't really expecting. So what can I say? This first time was fun. I'm glad it's done. We are still trying to figure out what's going on in the rest of the year. I think Ted and I will be back in Baton Rouge in September or October because we're going to run out of money as a state and as a country probably really soon, and we're going to have to do some budget shenanigans. But since we're at 7:10, I want to start talking to Ted, and there's two things I want to talk to Ted about, and I'll start with the first one. Ted, you've been around for 8 years now, and when I got to Baton Rouge, and we had 14 new Democrats, y'all, out of 37, I think that's right. And Ted has been one of the very few people. Ted literally brought us around the Capitol and showed us where things were and has walked so many of us through how to present bills and how to work the floor. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about what it was like when you started, and was there someone looking out for you, and how you've been able to translate that into mentoring so many of us.
Yeah, thank you, Mandie. I am excited to join you in your first town hall. And, it's ironic when you asked me about, when I started, I worked in the building for several years as a policy advisor and as a staff attorney. So I knew a lot of the players and knew the issues. But, it's ironic in your seat, you mentioned Walt Leger, and Walt was one of those senior members who did for me what I did for you guys. Made sure I knew who the staffers were, who were the best staffers, right? Mm-hmm. He made sure I knew how to present bills. He made sure I knew which lobbyists to trust, which lobbyists to watch closely, and which lobbyists to stay away from. And I'll tell you, when Walt left, I was extremely concerned about the leadership that we were going to be losing in not only New Orleans, but across the state. And then the moment that I met you, I was extremely excited that my concerns, of course, you can't replace a Walt, but I am extremely happy about your leadership. And, in your first session, you already made it to the hayride, and that means you are doing something good. If those assholes are talking about you, that means you're on the right track, right? So if you get a nickname from them, you are definitely doing, the people's work and being a solid Democrat and representing your area well. And for me, I just, with so many of you guys coming in, I thought it was important that I help you transition from campaigning to governing, because it's vastly different. And for you, I remember when you guys started back session and I was still at home, and I would talk to you, and just the frustration that I knew you guys were going through, and what I was watching from home. It was just important for me to be a mentor to so many of you guys.
Walt's actually on the call if you want to give
Oh,
him
really?
a
Hey, Walt.
message. He's watching right now. He actually has been very helpful to me too. I know a lot of members have a relationship with the prior person, and Walt can just, you can just call someone who used to have that seat and get right to the point and say, this person said this, and he knew exactly what I was talking about and how to sort of finagle things. That's appreciated, because we have term limits now in the legislature. And I generally like that, because it enables new people to come in, right? Like me and Matt Willard and other people, but you do lose institutional knowledge. So that's been something that you and like Robbie Carter and Sam have been very helpful with, for sure.
Well, look, we appreciate you guys, because you guys stepped up, and in a short session, you guys were still able to get some wins.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to ask you about that has put you on a lot of people's radar, and it's something that involves Marcelle to an effect too. So for people to just call it in, Marcelle is behind the pink Instagram account that we all know well, and she was very helpful often in promoting some of our bills or issues and getting people to call in. And one thing that she helped with, but that you got a little bit of help from 50 Cent and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James after, there was a bill about police brutality. It wasn't the only one. We had one in one of my committees too, but it was one that you were bringing to the floor from the Senate. And you didn't think what was gonna happen that day happened. And I mean, I was just blown away by what was supposed to be a sort of routine presentation turned into what it did. So can you tell our viewers a little about what the bill was and what happened that day?
Yeah, it was, frankly, you guys know what's been going on across the country after the assassination of George Floyd. Every state across the United States, they've been talking about how to reform police. And of course, Louisiana being no different. The ironic thing for us, we were already in the session, but since it was a special session, the call had already been drafted. So it was important for us to put forth some type of resolution to create a study commission to really dive deep into all of the issues around policing, from standards and training to qualified immunity, to, breaking down the police unions. And during that day, we had a lot of racially charged moments in the Capitol, from, Marcelle helped me out with me being called a racist from, let me not say that, me being called a racist from one of our colleagues, just having a conversation
a lot of names
around, yeah, that's right. Just having that conversation. And we had talked about some language, you guys, one of the things that I had to quickly learn, I used to get real pissed off about common sense things not passing. And then I had to realize that I had to take myself out of it and be more focused on the issues. So, years 1, 2, and 3, I would probably just go down there and lose and not compromise. So with a highly partisan House of Representatives, and so some of the Republicans had issues with, mentioning George Floyd, and there was an amendment to change it from George Floyd to several, which was better for me, because, George Floyd only made certain people pay attention to issues around policing, when we know that we couldn't fill up, a whole legal pad of names of people that have been slain by police. So that moment was just, we were supposed to go in, pass the resolution, and keep moving. So there was an intent to talk about the number of police officers that are killed, and not focus on the issues affecting people of color at the hands of police. So for me, I went down and spoke from the heart, and shared various experiences that I've gone through, and really threw it in their face, because a lot of times folks don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations. And thankful, to people like 50 Cent and LeBron and my good friend Angela Rye, who shared the video and now has been, seen by millions of people. But, to Marcelle, she basically made it cool and made it fun and broke it down, not just that issue, but several others. And I'll tell you, being able to, especially, for folks in our age group, it's easier to get them to grasp what's going on when you break things down, you put a spin on it. And I didn't like Marcelle putting my face on Beyonce's body. I did not like that.
I told her, but she said John Bell. It happened to John Bell.
I know, but it hit me, Marcelle. It hit me. You had me on Beyonce's body, but it made people pay attention, and it made people call my office. It made people ask those questions because they wanted to know exactly what those bills were about. And I tell you, it's just one of those moments where you have to just make people feel uncomfortable sometimes. But I appreciate Marcelle and others who shared it on social media, because it brought the issues into the homes of folks that are, locked out of the process because, they weren't like us and they were at home, making sure that they were protected from COVID-19. So they weren't in the building to take part of the process.
So you've been there 8 years now and a lot has changed on media. Were you surprised at the response that got? And I mean, do you think part of it was just what's going on in the country, or that because of Instagram and Twitter, actually it was more Instagram, that helped push it? Like, how is that different than, I know you've had big moments like that in the past, but what was the difference?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of what the issue is. We know that the single most important issue outside of COVID right now is police reform. And so that mirrored with the fact that a lot of times folks don't really get a front row seat of what's happening in legislative bodies across the country. So for folks to, see that and see something that was so real, and I know that thousands of people felt the same type of things that I shared, and several of them probably had similar experiences. So I think it was just, a combination of the issue of the day, and then bringing it to a venue like Instagram, because it's so important, especially now with COVID. You can't get your message out if you aren't, real active on social media. And if you want to talk to people 18 to 40, you better be on Instagram.
Right.
I'm not a TikToker yet, but after my head was on Beyonce's body, I might have to start practicing my dance moves or something.
Right. I mean, so as we're moving to Marcelle, I mean, just it's not just like social media, because I feel like you have these like older consultants who are like, oh, put it on Twitter kind of thing. But the point is actually engaging.
Yeah.
And that's why so many of the people are on this call, and people who voted for me and people who DM me on Instagram, last year and now, that they could actually engage with us, that it's not that you're talking at people, but you're talking to them. And I feel like that's something not many of our colleagues do, but you seem to do it. And when did you kind of start doing that? And what have you noticed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I started off, I've always been real active on Instagram and social media, because for me, when I started off, there were very few younger legislators. There was Jared, who was a couple years younger than I, and then, I was 30 at the time, and two more under 30. So for me, it was just bringing my generation into the process. And then the other piece is just being real, and people don't want to see titles. They want to see real people. So, very early on, somebody told me to kind of divide your social media up like 30% informative, 30% just you, and then 30% try to be inspirational. So for me, I've always just tried to share things that we were doing at the Capitol with folks, because people, everybody's like, oh man, we love you. We know you're in the Capitol. We don't really know what the hell you're doing. But for me, I wanted to make sure that I've always put it out there on social media to bring it home. And now I know, especially in Baton Rouge and you guys in New Orleans, we have a ton of young people now that are in offices, from the city council to the school board, and now in the legislature. And I see it. They follow the same trend in making sure that they're communicating with folks on social media, because our generation, and not just our generation, we're not going to, watching the news all day. And it's important that we know what's going on in our legislative bodies, and social media is a great place to do that and get that information out to them.
Yep. I mean, I'm on the local news a lot and I never even see it. My mom and my aunt and other people tell me that I'm there. I think this is a good time. And I mean, Ted, I would love for you to stay around because you probably have something to say about everything, but I know if you have to make a call, but seeing Marcelle help you get the video out, but also, I mean, Marcelle, you helped with vote by mail with Cat too, and then at the last minute with the ACA bill. And if you can tell us a little bit about how you started with the social media push for John Bell and the response you got. And I mean, you have just like ran with it,
Well,
over the last 7 months, 8 months.
I started it the day after the primary. I didn't go live that day, but the day after the primary, when I saw the voter turnout, especially in Orleans Parish, I'm in New Orleans, it was at 38%, and it made me so angry, and I was so pissed off, and I was like, how could we only have a 38% turnout when this is such an important election? And I realized it's because a few things. One was that a lot of people hadn't been spoken to in the messaging of the campaign. The people who were Democrats but who weren't crazy about John Bell, nobody was addressed directly, because it's kind of like what Ted just talked about. Like, political messaging like that isn't often real, right? Like, you don't address the elephant in the room. And so those people, like, nobody ever told them, look, we know you don't love John Bell, but he's done this, this, and this. This is who he's running against. This is the platform of Eddie Risponi. This is why you need to vote for John Bell anyway. This is why you need to use your vote strategically. Nobody really said that, or at least I didn't see it. And so that was one reason. And then, so I woke up the next day and I was just like, I've got to figure out a way to help people see this, because like you said, we're not watching cable TV. We're not doing these things. We're on social media. I wanted to bring it to where people were. So anyway, I started it out with, you can ring my bell. I went into like a 48-hour hole after the primary and just like created this whole website and Instagram page. And at the time I was working for Walt Leger, who we've talked
I didn't know if you wanted me to say that or not. So we have a lot of District 91 connections on this call.
I cleared it with him earlier. At the time he was a supervisor, and then, I went into his office that week. It was like, so I did this thing. I'm not really sure what to do with it, but here it is, and just showed it to him. And, I just kind of thought about it and decided just to run with it. And so for about 3 to 4 weeks, I think, prior to the general, I just started posting things about, this is who Eddie Risponi is. This is who John Bell is. You have the right to be angry. You have the right to be pissed off. However, this is what's at stake. And this is why you really need to consider, what you do with your vote. And in particular, there's a lot of people I was trying to talk to, primarily millennials, but they're the transplant millennials, right? Who come from other places, who don't understand necessarily Louisiana politics. And they look at John Bell as a Democrat and they're like, well, what the hell is that? And they don't want to have anything to do with it. But if you're here in Louisiana, you need to understand what you walked into, and we need your help, and you need to, not just give up. You need to use your voice. And then I'm from here, I'm born in Lafayette, raised in Metairie. And, I understand what it's like to grow up in a state that is deep red when you have more liberal ideas, especially when your friends and family that you grew up with don't necessarily feel the same way. And I just wasn't ready to give up on these progressive ideals. I wasn't ready to give up on bipartisan politics. I learned a lot of that from Walt. He was so good at working across the aisle, and he was so good at understanding that people are complex and that you can't put anyone in one box and just leave them there forever. And I appreciate that too, because having friends and family with very different political views, especially after the 2016 presidential election, I couldn't just give up on people. I couldn't just give up on my family and my friends that I've grown up with for the last 37 years. So that's why I created it. Once John Bell got reelected, I wanted to pivot it to still make it useful. And so I decided to turn into Louisianahbrah, which is how I say it, or I say Louisianahbrah because, there's a lot of reasons to say that on a daily basis. And, pivoting it from the governor's election to day-to-day politics is more just about, let's make you guys accessible to your constituents. Let's make this information accessible. let's not throw shade or shame at people for not understanding the basics. Like, it is very confusing. I mean, the most basic things are super confusing, and I only understand it after I worked in and out of the Capitol for 5 years with Walt, and I got the bird's eye view there, you know? And so, you know, I just think those things are really important, to educate people, to not throw shade, and make information and action items very accessible.
What, so when, I mean, you did the John Bell part, but when you started to focus towards the legislature, what did you see was, you know, educationally, I guess, like the most like missing, or maybe the thing that people seemed the most confused about or needed the most sort of encouragement for? Because I watched it kind of change as I went along with you. What did you notice as the creator?
So
Someone said you're doing the Lord's work in the chat room.
thank you. I appreciate that. Although that's, you know,
Goddess's work.
to a whole other conversation. But, you know, I found that, like, when I started, you know, I had worked in federal policy before. I didn't know much about state politics when I started working for Walton. There's a lot of stuff I didn't understand. And so I've seen that, just understand, I mean, and I still want to do like a really general, basic informational, like, these are who your representatives are. These are the 3 levels. You have this many congressmen, this many senators, this many state reps, this many state senators. There's just a lot of that people don't grasp and don't understand. And there's no shame in that, because again, it's super confusing and it's hard to know what the process is. I've seen a lot of people, when I would advocate, you know, call your legislator about this bill, they'd say, oh, I called Steve Scalise. And I was like, you know, no, like, you have to understand the different levels of government. So there's that. And I think that in terms of encouragement, the 2 most important things are, one, it's scary to call a legislator and tell them how you feel about something, because a lot of times you don't have a lot of information about it and people don't want to feel stupid. And I understand that.
Right.
And so it's just like ripping a Band-Aid off. It's learning how to ride the bike. It's jumping in the deep end of the pool. And I really, you know, people need encouragement for that. I still get nervous every time I call. And then I think people need encouragement to know that Louisiana is not a lost cause. I mean, we are here. We have a voice.
We're here.
We are here.
We choose to be here.
Yeah, you know, and we really pulled it out in the governor's race. I mean, in New Orleans alone, we increased voter turnout by 29% in 1 month. I mean, to put that in real numbers, John Bell was down by 100,000 votes in the primary. He won by 40,000 in the general. 28,000 of those votes were from the increase in voters in Orleans Parish alone. And more than half of that increase was from Orleans Parish millennials. And so I think that encouragement's really key.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we have a good question that you and I can answer, me as a new rep and you having been around for a while, the legislature, but also what you've been seeing just with this account. And Zoe says, what is the best way for constituents to make change? There's been a huge push to reach out directly to our reps. Is email or phone better? Is it worth reaching out to reps of other districts? So what I tell people is, it's always better to call or email or not than not. A personal message, even if it's literally 1 line, generally goes further. It just does, because, you know, we see it, or Nicole, my aide, might see it and say, this one, she lives by you, or something like that. But it's still important to call the other reps, particularly in committee. And I noticed that's something that you did because you worked there, so you grasped that we had to get some of these things in committee. And for people watching, how a bill becomes a law, it goes to 1, sometimes 2 committees first. And it often, you know, lives or dies, or in many Democratic bills, case dies in committee, because there are just so many more Republicans than Democrats, and they just have the votes. So it is important to make those calls in committee. And the reason is because we do notice as a member when I'm getting a lot of calls or emails about a bill that is about to come before me. And what it does is it makes me look at it closer. It makes me talk to my colleagues more. It causes more discussion. Does it sway some of these high profile bills? I don't know. I think sometimes it does. For example, the qualified immunity bill, we got 2 Republicans to vote for that. They were younger. They probably got more calls and emails. They saw their emails. They saw the social media. I think there's a lot of reasons why they voted, but those are some. I should have switched my screen. But from your point of view, when she asked about is email or phone better, is it worth reaching out to reps of other districts? What do you think? And we're gonna involve Kat in this in a minute. Marcelle. Sorry.
Okay, so I went back and forth with this because I try to keep it as simple as possible because it's Instagram. It has to be simple,
Right.
And so I did the form emails, and a lot of people did, comment like try and put your own spin on it because if it's a form, they can filter it out to a different folder and they'll never look at it, which is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's always better to email than to not email. And like Mandie said, like I see Ted saying here in the comments, like, yes, if there's anything that you can add, even if it's just one line, if it's something that makes it personal,
Mm-hmm.
you can't worry about sounding stupid. Like you just can't. So you just say whatever it is in your heart. Why did you feel compelled to send that email in the first place? Say that. Just say that one thing, and that will make a difference.
I like this bill. I think this bill is harmful.
Yeah. And if you call, all you have to say is, I'm asking the senator, I'm asking the representative to vote yes or no on this bill. And you can say why. You don't have to say why. But I know for working with Walt, like we kept track of how many people called and how many people emailed.
Mm-hmm.
If it plays a vote or not, who knows? But it does, provide cover for people who do want to vote for it and are scared to for political ramifications. And it proves that we're watching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure the person who called Ted racist now knows that we are paying attention.
Yep.
At the very least.
So I'm going to say something that someone else who's not me said, that other people involved in the legislature or commenting or watching or questioning don't seem to be afraid of how smart they look. Because you said that a lot of people said they're concerned, they don't want to, appear uneducated or uninformed, and it seems like other people don't really care. And just as someone who did answer the phone and did answer the call for a long time, did that ever cross your mind? It never crossed my mind that someone didn't know what they were talking about. I knew they cared enough to know the bill number or the bill topic and to contact me.
Just that alone, that level of involvement right there is like 10 steps above what most people do. So no, it never would I say this person doesn't know what they're doing, because they're at least engaged enough to have sent that email or to made that call in the first place.
Right. So like I just talked about committee, and I'm going to bring you in, Kat, on this. So Marcelle, you knew because you worked in the legislature that getting to a bill when it's in committee is super important, because that can really make or break it. And you did that a lot. You're like, this is coming on, this is coming on. So Kat, who started Louisiana Vote by Mail, a college student run group, they knew that, and they were on me, and we were in contact about when is it going to be heard, when is it going to be heard. And because it was COVID session, things happened very fast. But Kat, can you real briefly, like, what made you want to come up with the idea of having an organization solely devoted to vote by mail? And tell me how you started the process to help me and help the students get it to heard in committee.
Yeah, so the short answer is basically civic engagement was my entire existence at the time, and I knew I was going to have nothing to do for the next 6 months. So I was like, all right, let's start an entire campaign, much like Marcelle did. And so we just overnight—
But you focused it on one issue.
Yeah, and so basically when it came down to it, I knew the thing that was going to be the most important for us to make sure could still happen is voting, because, nothing can really happen if we can't vote and hold our elected officials accountable. And so I just called a bunch of fellow college students, including our good friend Charlie, who is now directing it since I'm in South Carolina. But I just called a bunch of people. We got everyone on board, and overnight just created this website, a campaign, social media, and really just decided to start pushing. And Charlie let me know about your bill at that point, and I was like, oh, so we can actually do this, like this is possible. Mm-hmm. And so that's when we kind of just made all the connections and started working for it.
So this was something you wanted to work on before you even knew that the bill existed.
Right. Yeah. I just kind of knew vote by mail was going to be the only way we could vote safely at this point, and still is. Still is,
absolutely. And somehow we're not there in Louisiana.
Right.
since we're on that subject, I know you probably know all the stats and I can help you out if you don't, but can you tell the people watching a little bit about how prevalent universal vote by mail is in the country and how we've seen it expand this year because of COVID?
Yeah, so as of, I think yesterday, actually, we are one of only 9 states left that don't have vote by mail available to every single person for this election, which is sad. Like, that's just sad. And it really needs to change because obviously if we're not able, across the country, state legislatures are meeting by Zoom to vote on whether people have to vote in person. And that's just kind of unacceptable in my opinion. But even before that, it was still something that most states allowed their citizens to do if they so chose. And that's not to say everyone got sent a mail ballot, but everyone kind of had the option beforehand. So,
and that's a distinction that a lot of people don't understand, that at least my point of view, what we want to do in Louisiana is not that everyone would get a mail ballot, but everyone who wants one would get one. And that kind of seems to be what's worked better around the country. For those watching now, you can always vote by mail if you want to in Louisiana, if you're over 65, if you're a college student, in the military, in the hospital. There are a few other options. And then what happened at the same time that we were doing vote by mail in the spring, or right before, I guess I should say, there was an emergency election plan proposed that did slightly expand mail voter options for COVID related reasons. But there was a lot of problems with that. And Kat, I don't know, are you still working with the team here or doing similar work in South Carolina on voting?
Yeah, so I'm still up to date and basically more of advising the Louisiana Vote by Mail team at this point, just because I am working a full-time job at this point.
Right.
But I know they're coming up with a lot of big stuff in the next few weeks to kind of do our second wave of this push for vote by mail because, you know, we hoped that the Secretary of State and the legislature would have it together by now, but there's still every single day people pushing against it. Even when I think you especially and myself have made it so clear in committee how easy and safe it is to do. So we are having a new push in the next few weeks to kind of decide what that campaign is going to look like, but it is going to be a second push through all social media. So all of you on this call, I definitely encourage you to like keep up with that and share it so that we really can make a difference and hopefully push a little change if y'all have to come back in September.
Absolutely. And I talked to some of them, Charlie, and some of them earlier, and I'm hoping to get a little information from the Secretary of State. Ted, if you're listening, can you pop back in for a second? We are, as people in the comments are noting, Ted, as people in the comments are noting, and that we dealt with last week, there was problems with mail voting last time, and we don't have a plan yet for November. So, you know, what are, I'll let you answer it. I mean, I'm going to answer it too, but what are some things that we as legislators and the voters and activists out there can do over the next few weeks and months to try to make voting safer and more accessible to all voters?
Yeah, I'll say that, you know, for you guys out there, continue to kick and scream, continue to send us the information. I heard from so many constituents on election day that had issues. For us, we can take that to another New Orleans rep, Royce Duplessis, who's the vice chair of House and Governmental Affairs, and call a meeting. And in that meeting, we can continue to press upon the Secretary of State to make some changes. You know, of course, I would, you know, connect with some lawyers out there if there are some folks, organizations that we already had one lawsuit that the judge kicked out, but, you know, I would, you know, keep filing. You know, I'm a lawyer, and as long as you have a good claim, it's not a frivolous lawsuit to keep going. And especially now that before we just had suspicions of what would happen, but now we have facts about our concerns because they came true. So I would, you know, always have a mixture of legislation and litigation, and then, you know, but we have to hear from you guys. So, you know, just continue to reach out to us and let us know what the issues are.
And this is one more question before I let you go and switch to Cagney, because I think this has this similar answer. Someone asked, why do some reps insists there's so many problems with vote by mail and we just can't make it work. And from what I saw this year, a lot of the same people who think voting by mail wouldn't work didn't want to abolish qualified immunity, don't want to expand minimum wage, don't want to expand paid leave, don't want to raise the minimum wage. In a brief, polite nutshell, why do you think these people don't want to expand voting by mail or minimum wage or paid leave or any of the things I just said?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's not the reps that are insisting it didn't work. It's constituents that we represent that are telling us it didn't work because of their experiences. These folks, anything that's going to uplift working people, anything that's going to be beneficial to Democrats, there's a thought out there that young people who tend to vote Democrat are going to utilize vote by mail. Hence, we don't want them to do it. We've tried to expand early voting on Sundays. Most folks think that when Black folks are leaving church, they're going to go vote, so they don't want to do it, because most of us are probably going to vote Democrat. So the issues, things that are progressive, they say no because it's not. There's a belief that it's not going to help the Republican Party. That's as simple and frank and as honest as I could be.
I agree with that 100%. And the thing is, in certain states like Florida, the Florida Republican Party pushes voting by mail because there are so many seniors in Florida. Yeah. So it just depends on your point of view. But thanks for that. Welcome to stay and talk about field if you want. But Kat, I know you had a lot of students involved who did outreach to others, but because it was COVID, it was mostly social media, but you had some of them come and testify. And I want to lead that into Cagney and talking about how important it is, if you can, to show up at an event, to show up in front of a person, to really explain it in person. And just real briefly, what was that like testifying? I got so many compliments on how well prepared y'all were and how much you knew about the subject, and was really proud of y'all, and several people wanted to hire you. So tell me what it was like getting prepared, and were you scared, and what it felt like after? And then Cagney's going to tell us a whole bunch about talking to voters.
Yeah, well, first of all, I am still looking for a job when the election's over in November, so if you want to hire me, please. But it was definitely nerve-wracking. That was the first time I had testified in front of committee. I'd been to plenty, but I had never really done it myself. And so it was really important to me that we showed that we weren't just a bunch of kids begging and kicking and screaming, that we knew what we were talking about and that we were really prepared. And that we were representing all the people that had built us up, like you and so many, and like Louisiana Progress and Power Coalition. We wanted to make sure that we were really representing y'all well. And so it was very fun. I think after Charlie spoke, nobody really asked him questions, so I was kind of off guard. And then I believe it was Rep. Hodges.
You had questions and comments, in my view, from people who were trying to bully you a little bit.
Right. And so, and I think they expected us to just kind of lay down and take it. And I was like, oh no, I came with my receipts. Here we go. And so I let Valerie Hodges kind of finish her spiel. And then I was like, well, actually, that was just really factually incorrect. And we're just gonna.
Hey, I do that all the time too. It was like, you're
right. It was fun. It felt like I got some, it's always good to get a zinger in there and feel like you did something. But I think it's went to show that really anyone can participate in our legislative process, and you do have the power to go and actually talk to your representatives face to face and have that opportunity. And it's really important that you do, because they can read an email, but if they can't avoid you if they see your face.
Right.
So,
and are you glad you did it, and you would encourage people to do it again, even though it might have been a little scary?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
The adrenaline is really fun. So 10 out of 10 would recommend.
It's nerve-wracking. I mean, I noticed over the course of the campaign last year, but also this year, you do get used to it after. I wouldn't say you get used to it. It gets easier after a while, but I still get a little fluttery sometimes when I have to go stand in front of all these people. But I got practice doing it by knocking on my part of, I don't know, what did we do last year? 10,000, 15,000 doors, whatever it was, for y'all just calling in. Cagney was my field director last year for my campaign for District 91, and because I wasn't a known person and didn't have a lot of money at the beginning, I had to go get every vote myself. And she was one of the main people who helped me. And we'll get into sort of the history of that in a second. But, you know, just sort of from a person to person, Cagney, like, you know, what's your view on how important it is to really touch voters? And when I say touch voters, I don't mean during COVID, touch them, but to really get yourself and your candidate in front of people who are going to vote. Like, you know, what's your view on that?
I believe that everyone wants to know when you're out and you are reaching out on behalf of a candidate, they want to know that you're going to work for their vote. A lot of the feedback has been like, well, when am I going to see her? When am I going to see him? And so I like to be able to say, well, it's funny you asked that. She's on the other street, which was a lot of the situation with you and I. They appreciate that. They appreciate that they mean enough to you to come out in the rain, in all kinds of icky conditions, rather than just pushing out radio ads, commercials, or just, you know, sticking to social media, which is effective, but one-on-one, it makes it personal.
Right. And something I heard a lot, because, you know, we did things very non-traditionally last year, from a lot of people that said, no one has ever come on my street, or no one's ever talked to me. And that would like hurt my heart when I heard that sometimes. And I know you hear that a lot. So who do you hear that from? And what do you say to them when someone says, no one's ever asked me for my vote?
What I hear from that is that generally, the people that are running for offices have like set the bar really low when we're talking about gaining the trust of their constituents or the people that they want to trust them. And so it hurts my heart too, because it makes the everyday person not trust,
right,
you know, people that really have good intentions. There's a genuine distrust there. And it shouldn't be that way, because there are good guys. But I feel like they feel cheapened sometimes if you just send mail or you just robocall or something like that. Like it's, I shouldn't have that response, but I have.
Right. I mean, do you think, you know, part of it is voters have been jaded by modern campaigns, and at least that's what I felt, that actually, I mean, you don't know how many people, so these things work together, everyone watching. Once I was doing ads and social media and Facebook, sometimes I would knock on a door and they would open it and say, oh, you're her, you're like, they would kind of look around like this. Can you talk about like sort of how all those things work together, but why it's still important to put your face and your candidate's face in front of voters, even if you have all the other things, and how they work together, regardless of the size of the campaign, whether it's a little, you know, whether it's president or District 91?
Well, it's like you said, the voter is jaded, especially in the Black community. We have not had solid leadership, and unfortunately, this is where we are, and this is why we have gotten to this place, to where now someone that's campaigning and asking for the vote has to have some get up and go. Meaning I should see you everywhere. I should hear about you tweeting. I should hear about your Instagram posts. And then when I see it, when it's targeted, it's like, wow, you're in my face. That's the way to do it. It doesn't matter if you're the small person and you're being outspent 3-1, 10-1, whatever that number is. If you have some hustle and some pick up and go, and you have some grit to withstand the brutal thing called field, because it is brutal, it's uncomfortable.
Summer.
We've been out in heat indexes of like 111 for like 5 hours. We go 7 days a week, but that's what it takes. And if you're willing to do that, and the voter sees that you're willing to do that on top of everything else that you're putting in front of them, it's a win.
And I see it as, you know, there's no formula for these races, but you can always outwork someone. At least I think that's how I was as a lawyer and I was in school. And for new candidates, you're not going to have as much money or you're not going to have as much recognition, but you can work. And that was something that I saw firsthand. But circling back to what Marcelle was talking about a little bit, how people were a little afraid or nervous. It was hard for me to start knocking on doors. And I know it's been a long time since you started that, but I don't know if you remember that, but we had a lot of volunteers last year who were very new and very nervous. And what can you tell people about, what it's like to start and some of the natural emotions you're going to go through, but what it's like at the end of the day on your first day or your second day knocking doors?
Well, it's like I tell people, be yourself. Like, don't go in there with an idea that you have to be something that you're not, or you have to get it right. If you don't know, you genuinely don't know. I think the beauty in learning is if you're a person that says, I don't know, but I can get you the answer.
Yes.
People from the campaign have equipped you with those numbers or those emails to be able to get that answer, then utilize that, but be yourself. If you are a straightforward person, be straightforward. If you're a person that likes to chat, make small talk, do whatever is comfortable for you, because people can see BS from a mile away. They know when you're not genuine. They know when you are a car salesman them. So it's like the person that goes door to door selling vacuum cleaners or knives.
Right.
We know that you really don't want to talk to us, you just want our money. And so it's just
I think you hit on something that actually, like, being nervous sometimes helped me because people saw it as genuine. And you and I both love the college students, volunteers, love them, because they give me very honest feedback, very honest feedback. And watching some of them grow and sort of get excited and come out of their shell was so fun. And I know you have some of them working with you now, and we both keep in touch with them. If you were to give advice to, maybe a younger Kat, since she's already moved on, but to some of the college students about starting on campaign work and why it's important to start perhaps volunteering, the progression you've seen in people, I guess I should say, and why to start there. And Ted wants to talk on this too in a second.
I'll speak in terms of younger me. I didn't know that I was going to end up here. I was like the person getting the pizza or like cleaning up or doing the calls or doing everything that no one wanted to do on campaigns. But once you do that and you do it with integrity and you do it with excitement, you're just happy to be there. People pick up on that. People will pay attention to you. People will give you more attention and leadership in that area. Like for me, my first campaign was from a lady in Texas. I hadn't done anything. All I did was volunteer. And I was just escorting Wendy Davis when she was running for governor. And she literally walked up to me and she said, "You're managing this man's campaign," and just walked off.
That's great. Ted wants to come talk about this, but I also, while Ted dials in for a second, Walt, my former, my predecessor and Marcelle's boss, wanted to comment on what you said about just being genuine. And he said, saying you don't know, but we'll get the answer is the best policy. I couldn't agree with that more. Be genuine. And some people will like what you have to say and some won't. If you're genuine, it shows. And I saw that, I did see that on the campaign trail, and Ted can probably say the same thing. I've had a lot of members who have very different views from me come up, a little hat in hand, and say, I'm never going to vote with you on that, and I don't agree with you, but you clearly know what you're talking about, and you believe in it, and you did the work to research it, and they were like, I respect that. And I mean, I didn't get the vote, but it meant something to me. But Ted, I think you dial back in for a sec to talk about, I think the college, I'm not actually sure why you dialed back in.
Yeah, when Cagney, the thing that she said that, especially for young people on the call, she mentioned that she worked for free. right? And she did that, and she was willing to do that to get the experience. And with politics, all your life people have said, oh, it's all about who you know, but not in politics. Politics is about who knows you. And because Cagney showed up and volunteered and learned, now she's making money based on, I hope you're making money. You better be making money. They better be paying you. But now she's able to go and take that. And as Democrats, we do a really good job of encouraging people like run, but not a good enough job of telling people learn the business of politics, learn how to develop a field plan, know how to develop messaging. So I think Cagney has, really, is a shining example of how you have to really, sacrifice. And there's nothing like that knock on the door. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just nothing like somebody that's going to see you walking in the rain and they haven't seen it before. It's just nothing like that. Being able to walk to someone's door and give them your spiel, but then ask them for your vote. But Cagney, hats off to you for, just taking that step and working for free in order to do what you're doing now.
Yeah, you have to do it. It's like I say, I had to suffer a lot. I was not making money. I just got here.
So you worked really hard for it.
Like I worked really, really hard. I got a lot of doors shut in my face, but if you really, really, really want something, and you have the stamina to do it, just do it. Like you just gotta keep pushing. I believe in the work hard, and you have to believe in yourself first. Mm-hmm. So if you believe in yourself and your abilities, that translates when you're working with people and when you're talking to voters. Believe in yourself.
And they know you were genuine. They knew I was genuine. I mean, Kat started the group, for free. She believed it. Marcelle, woman after my own heart, started hers out of anger. I know that well. Those of you who know me, I decided to run out of anger last year. That's how a lot of things happen these days. That's how we all get to this, because we have this sort of fire and this genuineness in what we believe in, and people see it, and people are tired of the same old thing. When I decided to run, one of my lovely neighbors, Mr. Joe, he said, people are just tired of being told who to vote for. They can do it on their own. So to close out real quick, if each of y'all want to say a real quick thing, but one just slight procedural thing someone asked about in COVID, are there any restrictions we should be aware about? I think they mean just in general what it's like campaigning during COVID. And I mean, Ken, you can talk for a second, but I think what I would just say is be extremely sensitive to the other person. Let them make the decision if you are going to be around them or talk to them. But lots of people are out and about nowadays, and they also are all on their phone all the time.
Right. Navigating COVID has had its challenges, but I had to figure out a way to be able to touch the same amount of voters that I needed to touch, but also respecting their space. Mm-hmm. So that means making sure that everyone is wearing masks, making sure that everyone is hand sanitizing, understanding like if someone's on the porch, that does not mean open the gate and go in there. Ask for their permission. Say up front, I'm not gonna come close to you. I just would like to leave this here, and this is why I'm here. Make them comfortable, because you do have a duty to protect them and yourself. And Absolutely. So you always have to think about that. So I just think like you have to just think about, do you want to be that person that's responsible for getting someone sick if you are asymptomatic? And that means still doing what you got to do, but doing it cautiously. You can still be passionate about it, but think of the person first, just like we want our legislation and everybody else, our politicians, to think of us first. Like you are an extension of that person or whatever group that you are representing.
Be sensitive.
So care about them. Care about them enough to not encroach on their health.
Okay. I'll let everyone wrap up. And Ted, can you go first? And in your wrap up, Michelle with Lyft, she was asking about a couple of things, but one thing she asked about, which I'm curious about too, as a new legislator, since we've been in COVID, and if we go back, so you said you would read letters, and I thought I was going to be reading people's letters, but that didn't happen in my committees. How do you feel about people sending in short videos or something to that, or even if they're going to testify, something to that effect? Is that something you think that we could make work? And she said, even if legislators walk out of the room during the video, because we often have legislators literally walk out when someone's testifying that they don't want to hear it, and that's great.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's something that technology that we certainly can do. For me, as a committee chairman, when I wasn't there, I know that the person, my vice chair, didn't read emails that were adverse to his position, right? And for me, I made the point to read the emails into the record because I just know how important it is for many folks that would have traditionally been there. But I think that, and I've talked to the folks because I tried to Zoom in while I was out during COVID, but the technology just wouldn't allow it, even though I couldn't vote. So I think that it's an easy way to get a process where they could send videos to our committee secretaries. And I think that number one, the chairman has to have the will to do it. And then I know that we have the technology, but the problem will be, it will have to be sent in probably at least 24 hours before the committee to make it happen.
Okay. Well, we're going to be working on those things, including us being able to vote and do things remotely. But as we go around, Ted, are there any final words you would like to impart on us as our elder statesmen on this call?
No, I'll just say thank you, ladies, for allowing me to join. I know that as a girl dad, I know that I am in a world that should be run by women. So thank you guys for allowing me to participate. And this is very shameless plug. I'm sorry, Mandie, but any DSCC members that are out there, I'm running to be the chairman of the Louisiana Democratic Party. I would appreciate your support. And if I hadn't talked to you, I'll be calling you within the upcoming days. So again, thank you, Mandie. I look forward to many more of these.
And I am fully supporting you as chair, and people will hear more from me why you're a friend and a colleague, and I really appreciate you being there and being here with us tonight as our one male panelist. Marcelle, our social media maven, any parting words for us? And I know a lot of the viewers here know your site and are looking to you for some thoughts on what's next.
What's next? Well, we have a presidential election that very much looks like the gubernatorial election that we had last year, with a candidate that we are not crazy about, but an incumbent that is, we just can't have him in the White House anymore. And so I am, it's complicated because everything is messed up this year, and you guys are probably going to go back in session. I want to cover that. But what's next is that I see trying to cover October session and the presidential campaign. And what I would like to say is thank you, Mandie, for hosting this and putting all these people together, and once again providing accessibility to your constituents and to creating this conversation. And also, I want to thank everybody who has followed Louisianahbrah and who has staked a claim in it, because I tell you, the DMs that I get, the messages that I get from all the people in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Pierre Part, I mean, all over the state, who say that the Instagram page has created a space for them that gives them hope. I mean, those messages mean the world to me, and that's what's going to make a difference in our state. So if I have any advice, it's just to keep showing up. We have seen time and time again, both good and bad, how one person can make such a difference, and you can be that one person. So keep voting and keep talking to each other. Forget that we were all raised saying, oh, talking about race and politics is just rude. No, forget that. We're not playing it anymore. We're talking about it. We're educating ourselves, and we're going to build those bridges. And that's it.
I love what you're doing, and I'm excited to keep working with you in any capacity we can do it. And I really appreciate all you do. Ms. Kat, what words do you have for our viewers on college students, but also people who are looking to maybe get at the last minute on a campaign?
Yeah, I think for college students, just get as involved as you possibly can. You're in a very unique time in your life where you have the most amount of time and the least amount of responsibility that you'll probably ever have. So enjoy it while you can. And if you want to get involved in a campaign, there are still tons looking for people. Mine is looking for people. And I'm also going to shameless plug and like send our little sign up link in the chat.
Absolutely.
It is going to be 100 days till the election on Sunday, I believe. And we are trying to get as many volunteers as we can in South Carolina. And there are tons of amazing candidates in Louisiana as well. But a lot of the races in South Carolina are really, really competitive right now, and we need as much help as we can from all over the country, because they're local races, but it's affecting everyone nationally, because we have people like Lindsey Graham still in office that we need to get out. And so any help y'all can give would be wonderful. But just apply, show that you're eager to help, and show that you have the enthusiasm and the drive to do it. And I think that really goes a long way.
Okay. And my friend and constituent, Jenny Green, Democrat extraordinaire, reminded us for me to publicly point out and thank Louisiana college Democrats and high school Democrats for so much of the work they've done. And also, if you are a college or high school student, that is a great way to get started in politics. They can help you find an internship. They can put you in touch with us. They can put you in touch with Kat. College and high school Dems are really expanding in the state and doing a lot of work. And so reach out to them for sure if you're interested. And then finally, Cagney, any last words in particular about people starting out, but also, some people who might want to come out of their shell and help out and get that orange monster out of office, or perhaps just elect a district attorney this year?
All of the things, right? So we have our work cut out. I say, if you're gonna get involved, do your research on whoever you reach out to, and just make sure that you stay engaged and embrace the suck, because sometimes it will, and stick with it. And I'm also available for anyone who has questions or wants to learn. I try my best to leave people better than they were when they are meeting with me. I didn't have a lot of guidance, so I try to be the person that I wanted when I first started out.
I feel that deep into my bones as a lawyer, as a candidate, as a woman, all of the above. I've always wanted to mentor people in a way that I felt like I wasn't either when I was younger. So I understand that, and I very much appreciate you. And real quick, as I'm closing out, my good friend Michelle Ehrenberg reminded me something that I tried to forget about, that on the ballot in November, there will also be a constitutional amendment to ban abortion in Louisiana. And if you're wondering why that's on the ballot, Ted's shaking his head. I also don't know. We have more abortion restrictions in our state than anywhere else, almost 100. Probably most of you on here know that I'm one of the few pro-choice legislators. Ted is one as well. There are not many of us, especially outside of New Orleans. And I remember watching him last year in one of those horrible bills go down to the well with Pat Smith and some others and just talk about how harmful our restrictions are. And while this amendment may not immediately, if it's passed, and let's try to avoid that, but it may not immediately change things, it is very symbolic, and it is something that could make it harmful for future generations of women. And it really pains me to see how our state lets women and pregnant people in this state die at such high rates and experience such bad health outcomes. But we have to just keep plugging away on it. And you got me there now, and you have Ted, and you have some others who understand that. For our log out, my aide, good friend, campaign, I don't know, what were you? Campaign everything, has been here messaging out MacGyver. She's been here helping me. She answers all the emails from people who need help with unemployment and SNAP benefits and a lot of really depressing things lately, as Ted knows. So a lot of you know her from that. And if you want to know what it's like to work for a legislator, she can maybe say something nice about it. But I have been so blessed to have friends like Nicole and Cagney and Ted and Kat and Marcelle and all of the wonderful people who called in, and I've kept you 12 minutes late, but we are going to send a follow-up email. I'm going to try to answer some of these questions in a follow-up email and send everyone's links. And everyone on here is very accessible by social media. So I hope you, oh, and Ted says Nicole was a hell of a manager at Eiffel. Nicole also has dipped her feet into campaign work. If you know someone looking for website, financial stuff, little advice. We're all doing the thing now. So anyway, I love all of y'all. This has been really fun. I think a lot of people are jealous that they were not invited to participate in round 1. So we will be back here maybe in a few weeks, and everyone chiming in, I really appreciate it. I will send y'all an email this week with follow-up links and answers to questions. Everyone have a good night, and you all deserve a glass of wine. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.